Well, hello everybody. This is May King Tsang here, first name May King, and today we've got Jefferson and Katrina with us. Now, let's tell the world who you are, Katrina, and what you do.
Hi, I'm Katrina Marshall. I'm a Barbadian living in Birmingham, and I'm one of the founding members of the PRCA's Race, Ethnicity, and Equity Board. And I'm going to be chatting about performance and progress coming up at the conference in October.
Wonderful. Jefferson?
My name is Jefferson Darrell. I am founder and CEO of a boutique consultancy, Breakfast Culture. I'm Canadian of Bermudian heritage, so shout out to the Bee Islands. I will be moderating the panel on performance and progress, how our professional membership bodies are showing their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Lovely. Now, Katrina, you mentioned a couple of the bodies that you represent. I was just wondering whether you can share an example of how one of those professional bodies have been able to demonstrate beautifully their commitment to DEI.
Not a problem, Making. I'm really proud to be one of the founding members of the Race, Ethnicity, and Equity Board. Obviously, it was born out of what Jefferson so beautifully has referred to as the racial awakening of the last year or so. And what we've done is make sure that people pay attention to the numbers. As you know, if it gets measured, it gets noticed. So we have launched a study on the ethnicity pay gap. It is currently available for those who are interested. We've looked at where there's a disparity between what our white counterparts are being paid. And we've also encouraged our members to do their own homework, do a little bit of digging in and of themselves, not from a position of wanting to have a gotcha moment, but to make sure that we're walking the walk as well as talking the talk. And I have to commend my chair, Barbara Phillips, for being unrelenting in making sure that we pay attention to our commitments and to live what we're talking about, because the time for talk shops has long passed.
Now, Katrina, you talked about the importance of stats, not to catch people out. And Jefferson, I believe you have an interesting stat that you wanted to share as well.
Yes. So just to underscore what Katrina was stating, we're bringing together members of organizations such as Katrina with CIPR, as well as IABC, the International Association of Business Communicators, the Canadian Public Relations Society, and other public relations and communications associations. Here in Canada, for example, I personally have been advocating for a lot of research. As Katrina so succinctly put it, if it doesn't get measured, no one's going to pay attention. So recently in Canada, the Canadian Marketing Association, as well as POCOM, the People of Color in Canadian Advertising and Marketing, they conducted a survey and they took a look at racialized folks within our industries. Admittedly, this is the broader marketing and creative industries, not just PR. But what I find interesting, whenever we bring up the issue of underrepresentation, especially of racialized peoples, in public relations and communications, the first thing most people state is, oh, there's a problem with the pipeline. There aren't enough Black people. There aren't enough Asian people. There aren't enough, racialized peoples, period, interested in marketing or communications or PR for us to actually have enough people in the industry. What I thought was fascinating is though CMA, the Canadian Marketing Association, and POCOM, People of Color in Advertising and Marketing, they released a stat that actually, they both did studies, and both studies demonstrated that something around, I want to say just over 50%, I believe POCOM number was 56%, of the industry are represented by racialized peoples up to the 10-year mark. What's interesting is at that sort of 8 to 10-year mark, that's when that number drastically shrinks. Why? It's because we typically leave the industry. And that's what we hope to talk about at this panel is why are we leaving? What's happening?
I read a really interesting blog about that, Jefferson. Thank you for bringing that up. With regard to the reason why there seem to be so many more Black female-led PR consultancies, it's precisely for that reason. They reach that so-called glass ceiling. They're not incentivized or trained into upper management, and they decide to take their talents and set up their own shop. Now, I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, because hail to more Black female strong leaders in the PR and communications industry. But the reason that they set up their own shop, I think, is something that we need to address and talk about a little bit more, because I don't think the issue of pipeline is an excuse anymore. If there's a block in your pipeline, you need to go back to where the pipe starts and find out where the block is.
Exactly.
So it sounds like then, given the two statistics that you've just brought out there, that there's a lot more that needs to be done with regards to training to help the industry prevent that. The people leaving in droves and setting up by themselves. I mean, Katrina, I thought you raised a really important point about not wanting to catch people out, but how do we start that conversation? So now we've got these statistics that are really, staring us in the face. What do we do next? And what can a company do next in order to try and change that or have that conversation?
This may seem like a radical concept, but I've always believed that you literally have to meet people where they are at. It's not good enough for you to tell the person doing the recruiting on your behalf to diversify the team. They will hire in their own image regardless. You have to go to careers fairs. You have to go to schools. You have to go to places where you would not ordinarily frequent. You have to physically meet people where they are at, because that's another complaint that is no longer going to carry any weight, that people don't come to you. No, you need to go to them, go to where they are comfortable. Perhaps the discomfort needs to be swapped out. Perhaps it's our leaders in PR who need to be more uncomfortable in social and professional settings where they are not the majority.
I love that, Katrina. Thank you so much for that. Now, Jefferson, you're going to be the moderator of this panel. There's going to be a lot of heated discussion, I am sure, in this regard. What are your thoughts? I mean, we don't want to reveal too much about the conference, but what are your thoughts about what Katrina just mentioned just then?
Well, I completely agree with Katrina. One of my personal pet peeves, I'll be brutally honest, I've been lobbying for this type of action, if you will, for about over a decade now. And anytime I enter any C-suite, speak with any president, at least in Canada, and I talk about the underrepresentation of racialized people specifically, again, the first thing I hear is, oh, the pipeline, the pipeline, the pipeline. Here's what I find fascinating. For the past year now, I've been an PR industry liaison for one of the PR schools here in Canada, Humber College. And in speaking, I do a lot of talks with students at Humber College, Centennial College, York University, Ryerson. And what I find fascinating is most of the time when I go into a lot of these PR programs, the students themselves, the classes are extremely diverse. There's lots of racialized students, lots of racialized peoples. And what I find interesting when I speak to the students is the students themselves tell me, in our classrooms, Jefferson, we see people who look like me. We see people who look like this group here. What we don't see are speakers. When they bring in the speakers, when they bring in the professors, the people who are teaching us and talking to us about this industry, they don't look like us. And that's what I find fascinating. So I completely underscore what Katrina has been stating, and this is why I love the fact that we now have some data that backs this up. The issue isn't really the pipeline. The issue is more about cultivating people once you have them within the organization. It's finding them where they're at. It's also making sure that they have the tools and the environment and the culture that will allow them to bring their whole selves to work, to be themselves at work. Something just as simple as, and I know this is funny since I shave my head, something as simple as wearing your hair the natural way it grows out of your head. I mean, my sister, she has sister locks. For those who aren't familiar with sister locks, think very, very fine dreads. And I know with her, she has had concerns about going for interviews with her hair that way. She pulls it back. It looks very neat, looks very professional. But depending upon who's interviewing her, they might not view it that way. And again, this speaks to, and this is where here's an exact example of a system and a systemic policy. A lot of times in workplaces, you'll have dress code policies where they'll state, neat business professional attire to the discretion of your manager. That's such a broad policy.
And there is so much that we have to talk about, but we don't want to say too much because I'm sure that all of this and more will be are going to be discussed on October the 14th for the Diversity in PR conference.